Welcome to Louisiana Catalyst Podcast, The Link, and we're excited to be here for another episode here. Of course, I'm Deron Talley, Vice President of Louisiana Catalyst. I'm here with my good man, always the President, Mr. Quentin Durr.
How's everybody doing?
Doing good, man. And also we have my good friend that I've known for several years now and just continuing to grow and lead and make a difference, not just in our community, but across the state as well, Kelsea McCrary with the City of Monroe.
I just counted and it's been 16 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Long time.
Wow.
Y'all have known each other since 3?
Yes.
Man, going back.
Since the age of 3.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Well, Kelsea, certainly, again, getting to know you and watch your journey navigate through corporate, but also, navigate through community influencing, through your art, through culture, and now economic development. Just tell me a little bit about your journey to where you are now.
Sure. So Deron and I actually met in a newsroom, and that was really the start of understanding pace, I think, how to set pace, how to keep up with pace, how to plan ahead, but also stay flexible. Your story didn't always work out the way you thought it would. The design and setting the paper didn't always work out the way we thought it would. And I stayed at the university for about 4.5 years after that, almost 5. Missed being vested by just like that much, but I didn't matter at the time. I was like 24. But yeah, so held several different positions there, and was super, super thankful to learn, as the kids say, like how to adult in that environment. Safe place to really figure out what you wanted to do, what you didn't want to do. And of course, I joke about this a lot, but like the return on investment of working in higher education is so short. It's 2 to 4 years. I mean, you can immediately see change with your, not to call it a product, but with your product, right? And the reason why I've started to reframe it that way is because then going to corporate and working at Lumen, the ROI is different. That's not what you're focused on, and that product is different, and it's never ending, and the evolution of that product is forever. And so that for me, I learned in that moment that I was just a really mission-driven person, that I could work anywhere, but I really, to light up and sparkle, as my grandma says, I needed to sort of believe in what I was doing. And so that time in higher ed really set the tone for how I felt about work and how I wanted to spend my life, on this earth. So then moving into state government, I sort of combine the two, where you have that bureaucratic structure, but you're changing communities. And so that becomes more nebulous. Community development work is tough in all the best ways. You learn really a lot about engagement. You learn a lot about the fact that it's not about you. It's a huge amount of humility, in that work, where I would walk into a town and I can guide, I can give examples, I can, empower, but I don't direct. It's not my town, right? So using that principle and coming back to the city of Monroe and to our region, even more so, it's important in an area where I feel as though the people have not really been asked. Spotty here and there, we've had these surges of deep engagement, but specifically now with these new administrations, with the new administration at the university, with the chamber administrations, there's so much more of a mindset of like what the people want come first, and then we sort of wrap the structure around that to move that forward. And it seems really simple, but it's probably the most revolutionary thing.
Yeah, with all the newness of leadership, cities, the universities, the chambers, a lot of new business coming in also, to your point, you can see a lot of the needs are being heard. And I think that some of them are already being met, but we'll see more of the community's needs truly being met. But I can see a concerted effort toward all the different entities kind of really listening right now. It's like a surveying stage, a phase of our growth in our new, what our new region or city and parish will look like.
It's pretty incredible. One thing we've learned through the Downtown Strategic Plan is that the things that we expect instinctively in other communities, we have not demanded in our own. When I visit another city or when I visit another riverfront community, I don't ever question whether or not I will access the river. I know that I will see it. I know that I will walk along it. I know that I will, even in New Orleans, you think about where you go, and that levee, especially where they celebrated their tricentennial and had that 300 installed all year, it's on the riverfront. Now, those of us who've been there a lot and have lived there and worked there, we tend to stay away from that area, right? And we go uptown and into the neighborhoods and yada yada. But for most of the people, 99% of the people, that is the heartbeat. And so it's even a lesson to me, coming home, that it's just never occurred to me. As many times as I've run down South Grand and, Walnut Street and all of that, that there's no pedestrian access, there's no engagement of that river. So it's just been crazy, and it feels like, why haven't we done this before, So I'm so excited to see both cities and the parish. There's a project we've been partnering on between the three entities to look at what's called brownfield properties. And those are properties that need cleanup, and there's, federal dollars and state dollars for those types of things. Most of them are located along the riverfront because that's where development started and then spread it out from that. So it's even on those subterranean levels of working, in the community, it's crazy that we've literally just blocked it off physically.
It is wild, because when you really start thinking about it, that's not only just Monroe, West Monroe, but that's other communities in North Louisiana. I don't know why. I think I was thinking about Lake Darbon and Farmville and 60 years of the lake being in existence, and the lack of, there's very little public access. They just put in the first beach.
That's right. Isn't that crazy?
This year.
Yeah.
And I think about,
and for people that have lived around water like we have, for us to not embrace it in a way that serves us, but to almost, shut it out. I think some of that might be a PTSD reaction to flooding, and and I totally understand that. But we were in talks with Venice a couple years ago, before the pandemic, about how Venice and New Orleans, for instance, have very different relationships with water. They're both surrounded by it. New Orleans has shut it out. Venice has embraced it. And essentially it's like, let's see who wins.
Right.
Let's see whose strategy will prove, sound over time. And so I think we can exist somewhere in the middle where we recognize that for what it is, but we also know that as much as we try to control it, there's very little actually we can do,
it's going to do its own
Mother
thing.
Nature. So
it might pick up and move. Ask Snackidish.
You're right. Yeah.
Yes. So I'll say this from a Cal standpoint. So I was able to see a difference from trying to do Catalyst in 19 under a different administration to now doing Catalyst with the new administration, and it's night and day for us. It was a pain to get started and not much support, but we got our support from people like Friday and everything. Right. And so now, and even like us, and even talking with Rick and different people, like the embrace of Monroe has been so warm. It's like I've actually kind of started looking for properties over here. I might say that on camera, but I mean, truth be known, I really started looking for investment over here, because I'm like, man, you kind of tend to gravitate to where you feel, accepted. And so it's nice.
There is a relief in, like Dr. Berry says, who we are, what we are, and what we're supposed to do, and where we are. There's a relief in that. And so, the jargony phrase, creative placemaking, which I tend to say creative placekeeping, because I'm not the first person to try and either save a place, make it a place, enhance a place, etc. So creative placekeeping is all about sense of place and identity. And I think we were talking this morning about what we were going to talk about now. And when we look at culture, there's just a relief in that. You're not accepting it in regards to, status quo, but you're accepting it in regards to, this is who we are, right?
Right.
And there's some pride in that. There's some humility in that, and there's some ambition in that. And I think the pride and the ambition is what we've been missing. I joke sometimes that we're humble to a fault, right?
Right.
It's like, oh, I'm all right at that, and it's like, no, you're really good at it, right? And we're very proud of it. Our food is amazing. Right. Our music is amazing. There's so much history and heritage here. There's trauma here, right? There's victory here. Right. And so I think that's the mix that I think we just haven't quite been brave enough to embrace. And I think when you look at that sense of place work and that deep identity-based, cultural creative placekeeping work, I think that's really what's been missing. And I think that's what people are starting to feel is, the university saying it, the cities are saying it, the parishes are saying it. I talk more with Lake Providence and St. Joe and, Tallulah and Morehouse Parish just about, what they're going through, what are they experiencing. And there's never really been that sense of regionality either, which is ludicrous because our people live that way.
Right.
So our institutions and administrations need to govern that way and make decisions that way.
Right.
Yeah, we talk about silos, and for years, that's what this region has been not only building, but even strengthening. We're going to stay here. We're Monroe. We're West Monroe. We're Bastrop. We're Morehouse. We're, and the more these silos come down, I'm ULM, I'm Delta, I'm Ruston, I'm Tech. The more these silos come down, the better for all. And that's what, ultimately what we're trying to even do here, even with this show, The Link, is really connect and bridge and build togetherness. We talked about it earlier, that common unity. Monroe, West Monroe, we are the big city. I grew up just north of New Orleans, small town called Folsom. It was Folsom, Covington, New Orleans.
Right.
We are New Orleans for the little kid in Folsom.
That's
right. And so for Bastrop, for Columbia, it should be no problem for them to come north and shop and enjoy and feel a part of this and be able to leave and live in Atlanta and say, where I grew up, where I'm from. I'm from Monroe, even though you're really from Columbia.
Right? Like, I'm going to go visit the Shepis. I'm going to go to the Princess Theater. I'm going to go to the new restaurant in St. Joe called Walking Pig. Like, I'm going to go to Rayville. So, I mean, I think understanding that the people move like water.
Right.
Water fills up all the empty spaces. And so if we make space for people, they will flow there, and it's just, sometimes it's as simple as just recognizing that. Just saying, like, somebody like me who's from Morehouse Parish, this was town. It still is town, right? This is where we drive to go out somewhere nice to eat or, buy school clothes or whatever. And so I think the more that we just recognize that and own who we are, then we're able, to grow from that commonly held space, like that common unity.
That's right.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the work that you all are doing now with the arts, right? As I mentioned, I feel like we're in a phase of, surveying and assessing really the need and hearing. But what you guys are also doing, you're also going ahead and building the brand, the identity.
Yeah.
How important is that for us?
So that's a little scary. It's easier, coming from that state level, always being the bearer of good news. Here's a grant program. Here's a person you need to meet. You got to talk to Duran because see what he's doing with Northeast Delta HSA. You got to talk to Quentin, see what he's doing with, this incubator space. And I would do those things in all 64 parishes. But now in this microcosm, the stakes are so high because we haven't experienced a lot of that resurgence. And there does seem to be that spirit of renaissance. And so you don't want to lean too heavily on it and burn people out with the surveying and with the planning and all that kind of stuff. So what we've decided is just sort of to step forward into things that we've always all wanted to happen collectively. And so if we make a mistake along the way, I mean, sometimes I was talking to the Arts Council the other day about the Candy Company mural project. We're learning as we go.
Right.
Because the city has never done anything like that. And the Arts Council has never helped the city do anything like that. And the people that were on the panel were, Chamber of Commerce, Black Creative Circle. I mean, it was people that, you may say, why is the Chamber of Commerce on that panel? Well, why wouldn't they be?
Right.
Do arts and culture not impact commerce? Do they not impact economic development?
There we go.
Every single event, do we not have food and music at it? You know what I mean?
That's the attraction to get
Right,
them to
like
shop,
that's why they come. So I think actually it was the mayor who those red metal panels had been blocking the Candy Company for years, and we just drove past it because again we get used to it and we don't think intentionally about that space or what it should look like. And he was like, while we're waiting in this time of redevelopment, can we not just go ahead and paint some murals? And my bureaucratic side was like, well, let's think about it. And then I just was like, why not? I waxed poetic about this a little bit yesterday in a meeting, so I'm gonna keep it short here. But I've been doing some research on Lafayette. So he had his flaws, but guy who helped us turn the tide of the revolution, and a lot of stuff in our state named after him, obviously. And apparently, I need to research this to double check it, but his family motto in French was, why not? And so I just had this moment where, sitting in the mayor's office where I'm like, why not? Like, we have the trust, we have the relationships, we got the Arts Council, like, let's allocate some funds, and we were aware that it's not as much as, an artist would make in their private practice with a commercial side, but knowing that we're a municipality and these are taxpayer dollars, but also wanting it to have that deeper element of training and teaching. That's our job, right, is to train up that next generation. And a lot of these artists are talented in and of their own right. They've just never done public artwork.
Right.
So that was the goal, is so that we have at least, I think 6 of the 8 panels have an artist working on them that has never done public art. And that to me was the victory in that moment, But learning as we go of like stepping out on faith in some of these projects to just see what happens.
Right.
And also trusting. That's the scary part. I learned that a lot, like working with all those communities in my previous role. There's so much trust that goes into those, activities and into that placekeeping. And this was never more evident than in this, where it's like we actually kind of did it inside out. Normally, when an artist responds to a public art call, they have their prepared design and they respond directly to the specifications of the call. We actually went relationship based, where we said, let's vet the artist first and then we'll have a conversation with them about imagery. And one of the artists picked up on that. I hadn't even realized that's what we were doing. And in his statement of interest, he said, I am so happy to know that the city is concerned with supporting the artist community first and then figuring out what this will look like.
That's great.
Because it doesn't kick people out that may not have the software or the ability or, the portfolio to produce this finished thing. And also it allows us to have, we've had so many great conversations, so much cool stuff has come out of that, where like they did some research and dug up some things about, the river or the people who were here before us, right? The native people, of Watson Break and Poverty Point, and just some cool conversations that have happened that would not have happened if we had just asked for, finished product. So going back to your original question,
No, that's good.
that's an example of some of the things we're trying to do along the way, because we do know the need is there, and we do know that the spirit of moving forward is there, and so we want to capitalize on it. But again, we don't want to burn everybody out with coming to a meeting again to have the same conversation that we know has been had 10 years, 15 years, 20 years ago. So we're trying to be a little Venn diagram and exist in the space, while we learn from this, but we also plan for this, and we're also, moving in the moment, I guess.
No, I love the why not, because the mistakes is what is the learning curve that makes the victory so sweet.
Yeah.
And I think we all at this table live by why not. I mean, why put an incubator on the south side and do a podcast for why not? And through those challenges you learn so much and build relationships that it really strengthens the community through those learning. And like I said, some of the conversations y'all probably came out y'all would have never had if you just would have asked for a finished product. So I applaud you, but that's been the experience with the city, for us. And the dealings, it's kind of like, why not? And it's like, okay, how do we do it versus, well, we've always, or, well, it's like, no, let's get creative where we need to.
Well, and I think what I'm really becoming a staunch believer in is that the role that the city occupies in most spaces is small. Our job is to, partner with this organization so that they can do X, Y, Z.
Right.
Our job is to get some of the funding for the sidewalk project, and then you, as the economic development district, do the rest. Our job is to, partner with so-and-so for this idea. But if we don't do that, none of that happens. And so we go back again to like the hub idea, or like the hub of the wheel and the spokes. That's what's been missing, is that the city has not quite stepped forward to assume its place. Which, in my personal work, I believe that about the creatives, and so that's also the goal, that the city is trying to elevate creatives into all sectors. I used to say all the time, if you're building a board and you have a lawyer and you have a banker and you have somebody with nonprofit experience, you better have a creative at that table. And it's not a question of why, it's why not, right? Again.
For sure.
And so that's the same thing that the city is trying to do, is that by embracing our culture and by, pulling that creative community to the forefront, we become more sure of who we are, and we also become more sure of where we need to go,
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that'll resonate in the community as well. Even I think about when Quentin has ideas, what I always, let's do it. He'll send me a laundry list of things, and I'm just like, let's do it. Even though I don't understand what we're going to, when we walked in here a year ago, and white walls everywhere and busted ceiling tiles, busted floors. And
Look at it
it's
now.
just like, let's do it, you know?
Yeah.
And I think the more you all show that as a city and administration, the community, small businesses, just consumers will begin to, let's do it. Let's go to that restaurant. Let's go stroll downtown.
That's right.
Let's park here and just walk and get used to walking in a downtown district
What's
again.
even like, look at our parks. We're starting to think about how to invest more strategically in the parks. Typically, it's been the people who have decided how to use the parks.
Right.
So why would we unravel that?
Right.
If they're using this one for sports and this one for walking and this one for frisbees and soccer, why on earth would we design separately
Against
from
that.
that?
Yeah, go take it away.
I mean, even looking at sidewalk projects, which Megan, our executive grant writer, is pursuing funding for some of those things. The mayor made the comment, he said, if the people have already established a trail, obviously we can't make it, exactly, but it's like, why would we put it somewhere where they're not already walking?
Exactly.
Right.
For obviously for years, if not decades, where there's been none of that type of public infrastructure, they've already decided where is safe. They've already decided where is protected, right, for whatever reason.
Yep.
So looking at those kinds of things and really letting the people and the citizenry, go first.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, definitely, you have to, I see it all the time. Grass growing all up on both sides, and then there's a little,
There's a trail.
a little,
Yeah.
dirt trail.
That's right.
And that's a telltale sign of what you need to be doing
That's
as
right.
as an administration and as a leadership. And so I commend you all for having that wisdom, that discernment, and then that humility also, because sometimes in leadership, we get so puffed
right.
up, and this city did it that way, and research says. Just follow your people.
Right.
Let your people kind of, tell you where to go. And so I commend you all for that humility in leadership also.
Well, and that's going back to one of my first comments. It's not my city. I'm just one of the 47,000. And so if it's only what Kelsey thinks it should look like, it's going to fail, right? Now, Kelsey's experience and background and expertise, again, I can help guide. I can, explain some terminology. I can show different ways to do things, but it's not my decision, just like it's not Mayor Ellis's decision.
Right.
He's just one person.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what we're really keeping in mind. We're in the middle of the phase 2, like community engagement section of the downtown strategic plan. But beyond that, there's so many other community engagement activities that the city council members do with their own districts, and that's where we really learn the most. And that's where we really hear back from the people. We had a great one with Councilwoman Dawson a couple weeks ago where we talked about traditions in District 5, and it was so fun, and we learned so much. I learned so much just about that spirit of reunion and of community building and capacity building that exists, and just the things that they love about growing up in that area of the city.
Right.
So that was phenomenal. And so as we continue to do those things and those city council people continue to engage and build and integrate into their neighborhoods and their blocks, that feedback only helps us figure out, where we need to be going.
Yeah. One last thing I want to ask you, Kelsey. Certainly appreciate your time as always.
Thank y'all
Great
so much for
conversation.
asking me.
We'll talk all day long.
Yeah, we would.
But we'd be remiss if we didn't ask, what is economic development really starting to look like and going to look like here in the city?
Yeah. So I mentioned this whenever I was talking to, I think, Roy with the Chamber and Chris Kelly with the Westminster Chamber a couple months ago. But one thing that we've really been focusing on now that the administration has been into office for 2 years, I've been here 1 year. There's been a lot of, again, it seems simple, but structural things that just haven't been in place. Understanding the city land that we own and its development capabilities, understanding where sewer and water is, understanding more about the airport industrial park, and why isn't it truly an industrial park, but more of, private sector has kind of just done their thing, but what is the city's role in that? How do we get our site certified with Louisiana Economic Development? What's our relationship with Louisiana Economic Development?
Right.
What's our relationship with our regional economic development organization? So that kind of our own, like, laying the groundwork for where we need to be going. Talking with the parish, talking with I-20 board, talking with SEDD, talking with DEDD, talking with NELEA, all these alphabet soup of organizations to understand what's been done in the past. Where are we right now? DJ has started relationship building. We've sort of divided the city into corridors, like business corridors, and there's a meetup Thursday morning. I'm not sure when this is going to air. There's a meetup Thursday morning for what he's kind of considering the Mid-City area, 18th, 19th. That there'll be one for the University area and Desir. There'll be one for Southside. There's been one, we've started engaging our real estate agents as like our first word of mouth. If you're looking to buy a house or if you're moving in to buy a house, they are the people that you talk to first before you ever get to me or anybody else. So having that rhythm of relationship with them to where we say, here's what's going on. You got somebody that wants to know about this, connect them here. So to your point, economic development for us right now is in that foundational relationship building stage, while not ignoring some of those larger projects that we're definitely getting engaged on. But it's first understanding, our own house and how to clean our own house and how to be prepared with data. How high can a building be out at the airport? How many flights come in and out a day? What's the capacity of cars on I-20? How far away is the port? What's its capacity? I mean, like all that kind of like structural understanding so that in a minute that elevator speech is ready. And not only that, but we have paperwork to back it up that's well designed and professional. We've been sending, data and spreadsheets to some of the rail companies as they go about their business just to make sure that they know that we're here and that we're doing our thing,
Sounds like the city is re-engaging its foundation to be that link, though. I hear a lot of linking in there.
Absolutely.
And so to play back on who we are and what we're doing with this show, I can see that you guys are also, and it's so important because you guys, that's your role.
That is our role. And to your point again, it seems like a very small thing, but it's like if the city is not rock solid on what property is available, who owns it, what are we doing with this out by the airport? What are we doing with this on I-20? If we don't know those things, or we at least can't get that information quickly, we might lose an opportunity. And so for us to really have our arms wrapped around what are the opportunities, who are the players, and how do we just had a call this morning with like a peer city that we've been really vibing with around some of the similar issues and struggles, and they're freely just information sharing. It's another cool thing we've been doing with like small mid-sized cities, specifically in the South. We've been forming somewhat of like a loose informal cohort to resource share. And since we're all in different states, there's no issues with that. It's collaboration over competition. And so that's been really cool to say, how do y'all do this? Here's how we do it. And they're like, parishes. That's the first thing anybody says. And I'm like, yes, parishes, French. Anyway, but yeah.
Yeah, it was fun going to Jackson to see, like going to other communities and seeing what they do and comparing that to where we're at and very informative and inspirational, So I want to thank you and the city for being a catalyst in itself of helping all these organizations and ourselves of just trying to do what we're trying to do, which is build a community and collaboration and ultimately just help people grow.
We appreciate y'all so much. I know we've talked a lot about the role of the city, but y'all's role is so vital and unappreciated. So I just want to say on air publicly, we love y'all, and we're so happy for y'all to be in Benoit and so happy for y'all to be doing what you're doing.
Awesome.
We're happy to be here.
Thank y'all.
All righty.
Thanks.